Today, on this combined the DYOJO podcast experience, we want you to pause for a moment. Can you just hit pause on your life? Pause on all your frustrations and concerns. Close your eyes and take yourself back to your first interview for a position in property restoration. What do you feel?
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
If you didn't grow up in a property restoration family or around the industry, or if you're like myself, didn't realize, I knew about construction, but I had no idea, water damage, fire damage. I mean, I guess you assume like if that stuff happens, somebody comes in and does it. But, I remember my first interview and learning about the industry and thinking, okay, yeah, cool. That'd be great. So, which we talk about with one of my early mentors on the DYOJO podcast, episode 15, No Risk, No Reward. Shameless plug there. But I was thinking about how, R&R magazine has done a good job of addressing like burnout in the industry. There's some good articles on that topic. And I was thinking, a lot of times, if you've been in the industry for a while, you can be frustrated, cynical, burned out. All those things. And so if you connect with the past as well as the future, this can be a good tool to recharge your batteries and engage your team. So do you remember when you first started? And this is actually part of the content that will be released for the Intentional Restorer for this month, but on Restoration and Remediation magazine. But remembering when you first applied and then thinking like, so what would your early property restoration professional self think about you and your current perspective? And then on the flip side, I guess in that vein, have you been able to grow your business without compromising your values? Which is something we talk about with Lex Cisney on episode 22. Another shameless plug, but of the DYOJO podcast. Are you energized or are you feeling burned out? Are you struggling to connect with the new generations? That's a lot of what we hear with, from, people trying to hire and not making connections. And then what would you tell your early property restoration professional self if you could travel back in time? So, unique opportunity. Obviously, the article is coming out and you can read that, but I wanted to talk a minute about Pro versus Joe podcast. So our concept for this is pros versus Joes, right?
What is this, amateur hour?
37 minutes. Engaged. On location podcast. Pro versus Joe.
Oh, that's it. I've had it with this dump.
We can't do this. It's over. That's a cool story too.
We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off.
What are we calling this? Pros versus, or not pro versus
I don't know who you are.
Joe, Pro and Joe, pros versus Joe.
I don't know what you want.
Pros versus Joe. Pros versus Joe.
Regardless of your mind, another long day, never say don't try. Ain't about pay, my face don't lie.
Shut up, you're so annoying.
Because for myself, that's exactly what I've experienced. Connecting with young professionals who are entering the industry may be the best thing to happen to semi-old guys like me. Well, yeah, I don't want to admit that I'm an old guy, and, compared to some of you, I'm not that old. while Brian and Brandon are looking at working with adjusters with open hearts, and many, from the background would chime in, soon to be broken, the optimism can be infectious. Whenever I consult with them, I try to temper my pessimism, right? They've got extreme optimism. I have quite a bit of pessimism. But I think it's important, if you're working with other people or, interacting with them online and they're new to the industry, let them form their own decisions, right? Form their own opinions. But I have also found that interacting with them has those cesspools of negativity are receiving fresh input, which is pushing the stagnant water from out of my property restoration soul. Isn't that beautiful? That's beautiful. But, I think on the one side, sometimes when you're an old dog or semi-old dog, you forget that people make mistakes, right? And so if all of your mistakes were put on blast and you weren't given multiple chances, would you be where you are now?
So you're telling me there's a chance?
So give some grace to the young guys, the people starting out in the industry. And then it's important too, it's so crazy, it's so encouraging. I can remember starting out in baseball, starting out skateboarding, playing basketball, playing soccer. It applies in sports, but it also applies in business, or anything like writing or drawing and those kinds of things. It is so stinking encouraging when you meet somebody that's been doing it for a while and has talent, and they embrace you and they say, hey, if you tried this, have you tried this, and kind of come alongside of you rather than just be like, oh, that's terrible, or, beat you down. So I guess I wanted to maybe encourage those of you that have been in the industry for a while. If you are feeling burned out and frustrated, I think, like myself, you'll get some encouragement from what we do on the Pro versus Joe podcast. And that's, again, the idea there is Brian and Brandon are pivoting their business into property restoration. So they're not new to construction. They've been working with property management, so they know some of those nuanced program, character-driven, character in the sense of there's role players that think they're very important and processes that you have to follow, which translates to insurance. And so they're coming with a fresh perspective and then learning from yours truly, the pro. So
There's a lot of things about me you don't know anything about, Daddy. Things you wouldn't understand. Things you couldn't understand. Things you shouldn't understand.
Obviously, if that's the only pro they have, then, they're doomed. But just that exchange. And so hopefully there's some encouragement there for if you're new and starting out, you'll maybe get some nuggets of wisdom as they learn through the process. If you're been in the industry for a while and have some frustration, maybe it'll recharge the batteries. And then also, if you're a manager and owner trying to encourage people about the potential of the industry and professional development, I think it can be a great tool for your team as well to encourage them on things that help the process move along. Because, even though Brian and Brandon are young, they're hiring people, working with adjusters, and so kind of learning that whole process. So, I think it's fun. I think you'll get a kick out of it. A Pro versus Joe podcast, which is the podcast within the DYOJO podcast. So you can find us on the DYOJO, DYOJO podcast.com. You can find it on our YouTube page if you want to watch it, or you can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google, almost anywhere where the popular podcasts are found. We're also on the Blue Collar Nation radio station. Boom. So please give it a listen. Give us your feedback. Man, shoot us some questions or things that you want us to cover. Also, be on the lookout. I'm releasing a new book, Be Intentional Estimating. So take a peek, keep an ear, feedback, subscribe, all the cool stuff that the cool kids do. But be nice and help our industry continue to grow into its potential.
That sounds kind of...
Dum 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 dum.